And hello and welcome to the Pumpkin Copter Cast, a good old podcast about video games. Finally, for those of you who thankfully did not watch the past 8 minutes, we've been trying 3 separate times to get this particular connection working, but it seems Skype doesn't want to record videos today, but enough of that. I am joined with Marco from Studio Evil, and today we are going to be talking about the latest game from that studio, Super Cane Magic Zero. But before we do that, Marco, if you wouldn't mind, if you could tell my -7 listeners who you are and what you do at Studio Evil.
Hey everybody, every listener. My name is Marco, of course, and I'm one of the founders of Studio Evil, which is a very small studio based in Italy. And it's kind of ridiculous, but I mean, in the business card, my job is creative director, but it's kind of funny because I'm directing only another artist, so it's kind of lame. But yeah, I'm basically a game designer and a video game artist. So I make 2D and 3D art, and I design video games. So this is basically what I do. I'm one of the founders of the company, and we started in 2011. With an older video game named Cider, and then we made a bunch of stuff until finally, after 3 years of development, we're almost ready to release the complete version of Super Cane Magic Zero. What I do is I mostly use Blender to make 3D art, and then I paint some textures with the tools that I need to change all the time based on what I have to do. So this is what I do for a living.
And what is your personal background with video games?
Okay, so it goes back since a long time. I'm almost 40 now, so I started when there was a Commodore 64 around. So I started playing video games in the 8-bit era, and as a kid I played a lot of the old computer games, but I didn't realize I wanted to be a game developer until a few years later, when I was, I think, 12, and I got my Amiga computer. In Europe, and especially in Italy, the Amiga was a big deal. There was a lot less consoles than in the US. With distribution, we had more like home computers. And at the time, I got this painting program. It was called Deluxe Paint, and I started to paint, and I realized I wanted to make video games. But yeah, so my background goes back from the 8-bit and 16-bit era, and from the 16-bit era, my favorite game was Turrican 2, which is mostly unknown. It started, I think, as a Metroid clone, but it's a very good game. It was one of my favorite games. I like things like, I don't know, the Chaos Engine and games like that was one of my favorite. And then I started to back in the high school. I think it was like slightly before Windows 95, so we were still in the DOS era. I started playing with a PC, so I have been mostly a PC gamer since then. So I basically never stopped playing video games. And with with very nice consoles like the Sega Dreamcast, which I totally, completely loved. That console was great, like games like Shenmue, and it was a very, the console did go very well, but I think a lot of titles that came out on that platform were very bold and very, very interesting. But yeah, PlayStation was around, and they got wiped out by the competition, basically. I mean, the Dreamcast. And so yeah, and I also had a Game Boy, like the original brick monochrome Game Boy from Nintendo when I was a kid. Yeah. Then yeah, later I also played a lot with the first Xbox. My favorite game was Ninja Gaiden Black. Actually, was slightly harder, but yeah. And also. Otochi. Otochi was a very old game from Softwares, the guys that now make Dark Souls, and it was like a Japanese, like dark, evil game with a lot of acrobatic attacks. It was a very good game. I really enjoyed it. It was kind of Dark Soulish. I mean, another prehistoric Dark Soul vibe. And yeah, anyway. So yeah, I never stopped playing video. Oh yeah, and also I was almost forgetting. When I was about my last years of high school, a game named StarCraft came out, and I played a lot of StarCraft. I also had back in the day we had basically a StarCraft team. We did competition in Italy. Back in the day when esports was not even a word, it didn't exist, but we did some tournaments. So we had our team that back then was called a clan, like a and we played a lot of StarCraft. Man, I love that game. So yeah, I played everything from action RPGs to strategy games. Arcade games, I really love video games. I really do.
Okay then. So
yeah, my answer was kind of a mess, but
that's fine.
I tried to tell you guys. Everything, but then everything came to my mind at the same time, and I was like, So yeah, this is basically my video game background. I like everything in video game, especially action-y, but more tactical games. I love them too.
Mm-hmm. So on to the real main questions. What is Super Arcane Magic Zero?
That is a good question. Super Arcane Magic Zero is the weirdest action RPG. Like, it's an action RPG, but it's super weird. The thing is, the game is based on very popular comic books in Italy from a comic book artist named Sio. But no one knows of this work outside of Italy. So we started working with him 3 years ago when we basically did a very like a small crowdfunding during an Italian video game event, which is called Lucca Comics Games, and it's actually one of the largest comic events in the world. It's like the third after comic companies and the Angoulême festivals. So it's very large. And we stay at Workplay, which is a very nice YouTuber. He does like print comics, but also as a YouTube channel with like 2 million subscribers only in Italy. So it's actually pretty big if you think that his audience is only Italian. And so yeah, we started working with Sio and his weird, wacky characters, and we decided we wanted to make this video game if the crowdfunding went well. Well, the crowdfunding went well, and we started working at the video game. So we tried to understand how can we put all these comics that are basically created around nonsense and like very weird jokes. How can we make a story? How can we make an action RPG? And that was the main challenge of making Super Arcane Magic Zero, actually. Making something that is completely nonsense, that also the player can somewhat follow to a conclusion, okay? So, so what we did is basically the game
kind of hold your hands for a couple of levels at the start, just to give you the basics of how everything works, and then we focus more on exploration. So the storyline is like a structure that keeps your missions together, but everything is not enforced. So you're free to move, explore, like glitch a couple of places if you want. So this is how we try to put all the to create a gameplay that also works with this very weird, nonsensical content that we have.
Okay. So, how would you describe the gameplay of Super Cane Magic Zero if you were like at a convention and someone came up to your booth?
Okay, so Super Cane Magic Zero is an action RPG where you can throw the things that you find and you can also eat them. And this is it. No, it's true. It's true because basically, okay. So the game works. It's the controls are very actiony. Okay, so the almost like an arcade game. So you have like a twin stick to move around, and you can direct your attacks in all directions in a very action. So you don't like click on a target and the character goes there and fights. You actually have to, attack every single attack. So it's very on the action side, but you also have in-depth character progression with all like leveling systems and random loot that you can find, and loot that has different like tiers of rarity and level scaling and random and enhancement that you can have on all the kind of weird gear that you find. But also the game in the game there are items you can pick up, like lift on top of your head. And with those items, you can do all kind of like small puzzles, like using them on triggers, on pressure plates, or you can also like throw them, and then you can like stun the enemies, and then you can pick up enemies and you can throw them against the wall. So there's like this picking up things and throwing them around that is also very, very characteristic of our game. And the final thing is that you can eat the same items you can throw, you can eat them, even if that doesn't make sense. So you lift a rock, you can eat the rock. But most of the time you're going to get hurt, but sometimes it's based on the characters that you're using, because there are like more than 15 characters. So there are 15 plus some secret characters. Some characters can eat like rocks or lava. Some others, like they don't like vegetables, they can eat vegetables. So we have all these kind of weird things that the characters do. And so yeah, the basic is an action RPG. And as I was telling you before, it's the weirdest version of an action RPG. So the core is an action RPG, but on top there are all these weird things that you can do that don't actually make sense, and that create all the whimsical, crazy vibe that our game has.
Okay, and you kind of answered this question already, but just since, as you said, the comic is apparently not known at all outside of Italy, so you got this comic artist from Italy to basically like help you establish the look of the game.
Yeah. So what we did when we started defining, the aesthetics of the game, we had a couple of issues we have to tackle. So CO has a very stylized art style, so its forms are very simple, and but we needed to have a little bit more complexity on screen, because so CO is very strong with comics and videos for social networks. Mm-hmm. So he uses his comics are like for how do you say that in English? For panels. Exactly, 4 panels, and that's it. The whole comic is there with little background and focusing on very witty, quick like jokes that are funny, that you can browse like in your Facebook or Instagram timeline. Okay, so they're basically very short jokes, and so we needed a little bit more depth to create the environments for the game. So we had to find a visual style that would work with CO, very simple stylized characters, but add a little bit more depth to have like an interesting background, an interesting world that the player would love to explore. Because if we had very simple backgrounds, I think like in the exploring like the 3 large overworlds that we have in the game, that would have become a little bit more boring, because lack of diversity and visual differences and visual things that are interesting. So we work with CEO, and but the thing is, we also wanted to have a very that the characters must look like exactly like the iconic characters from the comics, for the fans. So what we did is I did all the backgrounds myself, and then I created a 3D model that is basically, think like a 3D model, and then like stomp it to the ground with a weight so it becomes flat. So this 3D model is like made of sheets of 3D planes, like sheet of paper, and I gave CEO some templates where he could write exactly the characters as we wanted, and then the characters are like transposes in those 3D models, and so that I could control the animations. So we had all the characters that are hand drawn by CEO, and then we moved them on these flat 3D models that are all the characters, and so we were able to achieve, let's say, maximum fidelity, and at the same time have a great degree of controls on our side. I mean, the game development side of all the animation, the timing, and things like that, without burdening CEO too much, because he's not a game developer. He does the comics for a living, so he doesn't have time to spend 3 years making an action RPG with us. so we provided him with tools and with things to help us create the game aesthetics. But he also made most of the music, some of the music, not most, some of the music. He also created them himself.
Okay. And something I was wondering is, why is throwing objects like one of the central mechanics in the game? Was it just something you came up with, or did you find it was like easier to design around, or?
Okay, so there are 2 main reasons. One is that I wanted objects that the player could manipulate, and in a very simple way that could create unexpected results, like missing and hitting another player, or like throwing something that you need into the lava pit and you say, oh no. So I wanted to create something that created chaos, and but it was also simple. And one other thing is that we wanted our characters to be very silly, very basically stupid. If you play the characters, they're not just silly; they're like kind of dense. Okay, so we wanted them to be, because one of the mechanics is that they basically believe everything the people you meet tells them, and they gain superpowers. So they're so stupid that when people tell them, "Hey, you're a comet," so they gain powers based on the fact that they believe they are a comet. Okay, so you find there are 7 things that you can believe, and that will change, like what can you eat. Like if you believe like in the Jurassic diet, you can eat like a dinosaur, so you can eat like rocks and lava. I mean, dinosaurs don't actually eat lava, but yeah, it was fun. But anyway, so we wanted these characters to be very stupid, so they needed to have something that you do for fun when you're not very smart. So when you're like a small kid, what do you do when you're a small kid? You want to have fun. You throw things, and your mom gets very upset. So yeah, so this is basically how we come up with the idea. We needed something that the player could manipulate, and we needed something that was fun and stupid, and very, very, very like baseline. And we thought about when we were kids, and we were throwing things around that we like were basically punks, and our parents were like, "What are you doing? Are you insane?" So this is why characters throw things in our game.
Okay. And on to my favorite and sometimes my guest's least favorite question that's always on my lists. In your opinion, as a game developer, is video games?
Yes.
Okay, moving on.
No, I don't know exactly what you mean, but yes, is video games. Definitely. I live by video games. I love video games. And I think that our expression of art and entertainment, which is slightly different, but the difference is in why you create them. Art is, if you want to know, you communicate something or some feeling or some experience. Entertainment is the same, but maybe you do that also for money because you have to create an industry on top of that. So, anyway, but yes, it's video game. My answer is yes, definitely is video games.
Okay. And so, on to the next question. Did any pre-existing games give you the idea to make this game or help you establish the tone and the gameplay of Super Cane Magic Zero?
Definitely, yeah. We studied a lot of game classics, and the game is like a clash from like a Zelda-ish more approach of the world and Diablo progression and loot system. Okay, so we tried to stick these things together mostly, and it's not up to me to say if we managed to reach a game that is fun, but I really hope so. So what we did was really study very closely a lot of games that we believe that had interesting things. Even Dark Souls. I studied a lot of how the world in Dark Souls is created, which is actually very similar to what an old school Zelda game would. I mean, only speaking about game space, so how the levels and the things that you care about are placed in the levels, like resources or weapons. Dark Souls is not very different from Zelda, like the old school Zelda. And so we were like exploring all these different things to try to build a game that had the things that we loved in other video games, and some of the things that we come up with, like the throwing things or the eating all the things that you can do in the game.
Okay. So next, why are dogs magic?
Because they're cute.
Okay, good point.
No, the thing is, the magic dog is one of the recurring things that happen in Sio's comic, and for no reason whatsoever, actually. I mean, I think it's because dogs are cute and Sio really loves dogs. But the thing is, it's so random that sometimes in his comics the magic dog pops out, and so we wanted to have it to be a central thing of the whole game. Okay, so the title Super Cane Magic Zero, cane in Italian is cane, which means dog. So it's like, playing with the words for the international title, which is the same in Italy. Oh. But in Italy, it's like there's like an inside joke. Okay. But also because the cane in the story, the canes of the wizards from the Academy of Wizards that there's in the game, they transform into dogs. And magic, they're basically it's a very weird but it's this is how the game is created. I mean, Sio's work is all about these kind of things that don't actually make sense, but okay, well, But then altogether, when go with the flow, it actually really becomes a whimsical kind of fun experience. Because sometimes you just don't want to, have a game that is always like super serious. Okay, sometimes games, can be whimsical and stupid.
Yeah. And lastly, what is your personal favorite part of the game?
This is a tough question because I think now this might like I have split personality here. There's Marco the designer, Marco the gamer.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they like two different parts. So Marco the gamer, I think I like most is the overworlds that basically create the central part of the map and connect all the dungeons. I mean, the dungeons are fine, but the dungeons are more like designed like a roller coaster. So you go through them. There are some secrets, but mostly is a linear kind of things that you do. So you explore, you find the keys. They're somewhat linear, not exactly linear, but the overworlds are like you're free to move everywhere, and there's like all kind of places you can go, and then maybe you cannot reach at some point because you're missing an item, or maybe you need like an upgrade on your belief trees to go there. So Marco the gamer likes the exploration in the overworlds. Marco the designer, I think I love the most are the first levels that you encounter because they're very small and precisely handcrafted, but with some nice puzzles. So I love the couple of two and the last two levels because we made them and we're building them now. Actually, when in early access you can't play the last couple of levels, so I'm building them right now. Not right now because we're speaking, but 5 minutes, like 20 minutes ago, I was building them. And so, but I love them because we're basically at the end of the production of the game. And so we have all our tools and all our experience on how to make this game. We know that much better than like 1 year ago. And I think the last two levels are very interesting. They're like very compact, and I think they work very well. So because one thing that is fun when you're making a game, especially if it takes like 3 years, that as you make the game, you understand your own game as you're making it. Because you start with an idea, okay? But the idea is not the game. It's something that you think is going to be fun, it's going to be interesting, but you don't know. And you start prototyping. You have the early version. And you try the early version, you're like, we're getting there, but it's not there yet. But when you do the last levels, everything is there. You know what things work, and you also know the things that don't work. And maybe you use that things a couple of times in the game, and it's okay. But the last levels, you keep all the juicy things all the tricks and the things that you've learned making your own game, and then you can put them there. So I think it's, I hope people are going to enjoy those couple of levels at the end.
For me, it's probably the dialogue, because I remember both playing it at this past PAX South and playing it at home. Just right away, it's so, it makes sense. It feels like it's the dialogue between like the player character and everyone else is just barely connected, and just my favorite type of humor is just, anyone who knows me knows my favorite type of humor is just absurdist humor, like something where something weird happens for little to no reason and you're just like, what? And like, the dialogue, like the at times nonsensical dialogue combined with the sometimes really weird facial expressions of the characters is what got me hooked in the game in the first place.
So it was a good idea letting CEO draw exactly the faces.
Yeah.
Exactly how. No, yeah, you know what? Because at the start, I tried to draw, like to copy his style, and it worked. But it was not the same, and he's a very specific random expressions that he does that are very, very nice. So yeah, I'm glad you like them.
Yeah. And that brings us to the end of this particular episode of the Pumpkin Copter Cast, a good old podcast about video games. I would like to thank Marco of Studio Evil for joining me today.
It was a pleasure.
And before we sign off, do we have a estimated release date, and do we know like what consoles it's going to be on and what online stores?
Okay, so we don't have an estimated release date for the final release because we are working on the consoles. So we're gonna support. So we're gonna be on Steam, on PC, Mac, and Linux, and we're now in early access there. And then we're going to be on Nintendo Switch, PS4, and Xbox One later this year. I don't have an estimate because we are basically in the process of completing the last couple of levels, and it's basically almost done, but we're doing some testing. What we're doing now that is going to take a little bit, and it's kind of, we don't know exactly how much, is we're optimizing the game to make it run super smooth on PC and smooth there on and run properly on the consoles. So we don't have an estimate, but I really hope that will have a complete version of the game before summer or somewhere around summer.
Okay.
We're gonna announce the dates as soon as we know them.
Okay. And yeah, if anyone's actually listening to this right now, if you enjoyed, feel free to like, rate, comment, subscribe on the days when I actually post anything worthwhile. You can follow me on the Twitters at tgorman83, and yeah, there you go, Super Cane Magic Zero. We don't know when exactly it'll be fully ready, but hopefully not too far from now.
Yep.
And, yep, we will see all of you next time.